This is Fortress on a Hill with Henry, Danny, Kagan, Jovanni, Shiloh, Monisha, and Mike.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Fortress on a Hill, a podcast about U.S. foreign policy, anti-imperialism, skepticism, and the American way of war. I'm Jovanni, your host. I'm here with Monisha. Monisha, how are you doing today?
Thank you.
Danny. Today's episode covers the Global Sumud Flotilla, a civilian-led mission where over 450 volunteers from more than 40 countries, including 22 Americans, were seized by Israeli forces in international waters while trying to deliver vital aid to starving Palestinians in Gaza. These peaceful participants, many of them were teachers, doctors, veterans, activists, and some parliamentarians from Spain, the UK, and Italy, were zip-tied, they met deprivation and collective punishment for choosing solidarity over silence. As most nations remain silent in the force of genocide, failing to do their duty under the 1948 Genocide Convention, and Western states led by the United States continue to arm and shield the aggressor, these individuals upheld moral courage and humanity while those governments exposed to racism and barbarism. What should have been celebrated as a humanitarian act of bravery became an ordeal of illegal detention and abuse. Though many have now been freed after global outcry, the humiliation they endure will not be forgotten. Today, we speak with one participant who witnessed firsthand the cost of revealing the truth about Gaza and the blockade. Today, we're honored to welcome Zuleyka Morales Rivera. Zuleyka is a proud Boricua, Marine Corps veteran, and passionate international humanitarian activist. She served as a drill instructor and helicopter mechanic for the Presidential Helicopter Squadron Marine One. A true citizen of the world, Zuleyka has traveled to all 7 continents in 85 countries. Her activism was ignited after Hurricane Maria's devastation in her native Puerto Rico, the oldest colony in the world, and deepened when she survived police brutality during the 2020 Black Lives Matter protests. Most recently, she joined the peaceful Direct Action International Sumud Flotilla to break Gaza's blockade and deliver aid to its besieged population. Zuleyka's story is one of resilience, solidarity, and unwavering pursuit of justice. Welcome to the show, Zuleyka. Thank you so much for joining us today. How are you feeling?
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and to be able to speak with you. I'm all right. I'm recovering, but I'm okay.
I imagine after that ordeal, I remember we were talking offline about that sense. I forgot the name you gave it, the sense of being at sea for so long, and then now that you're in land, you feel kind of oozy still.
I think it's called disembarkment syndrome.
Okay.
Where you get so used to the movement of the ship that once you get back to land, your homeostasis is still kind of off. So you feel a little dizzy from being in the land.
You feel like walking sideways and whatnot.
Why do I feel so unsteady?
You're currently in Puerto Rico, a former Marine and activist who has been living in the United States for some time. You arrived to Puerto Rico on October 6th after a long ordeal at sea and after being under the custody of the IOF. What would you say your welcome was when you came to the island?
Well, I was released in the 6th, but I came to Puerto Rico, I think it was on the 18th or something like that, or the 20th. So I was in New York City for a while, and it took me a while to actually get back to Brooklyn from my release. But since being back, especially when I came back on the island, I wasn't expecting... Well, first, let me back it up a little bit. During our entire detention, after we were kidnapped, we didn't have any form of communicating with the outside world. So we have no idea what's going on. We're just in the prison with no sort of update on anything whatsoever. When we were traveling and trying to get back home, we also didn't have a cell phone. So there was no way of communicating. I finally got back to New York, that I was finally able to get a hold of my phone, is when I realized everything that was happening back in Puerto Rico and how the world stood up and raised their voices and mobilized for the flotilla. When I got back into Puerto Rico, I was completely shocked because the mainstream media here in Puerto Rico had been silent about the genocide and what was going on in Gaza and in Palestine for the last 2 years. But now, for the first time, there's a Puerto Rican in the flotilla. So now they're giving it the time of day. So I'm just grateful that this was able to be used as a bridge to connect what is happening over there and open the eyes of the people on the island. of the truths of the genocide.
It's interesting you say that. Right now in Puerto Rico, the governor in Puerto Rico, Jennifer Gonzalez, she's an open Zionist, right? And she's open about it. She's a Zionist. And I was in Puerto Rico twice this year. Early was January and then in July again. And I remember looking at the news and the way that the Gaza genocide was described was from the point of view of American mainstream media, from the point of view of Zionists, from the point of view of the Israelis. And it's interesting because Puerto Rico does have a large evangelical community, right? And for the most part, from my experiences being amongst evangelical groups, they do harp a lot in supporting Israel no matter what. What's your take on that?
Well, absolutely. I think mostly it's based on the indoctrination, where it says that they're chosen and they can't be, as far as like Israel in the Bible, not necessarily pertaining to the nation of Israel that was created 70 something years ago. So they have this indoctrination of not going against what the Bible says. And the indoctrination is based off correlating it with the nation of Israel instead of the Israel from 2,000 years ago. The support that Israel receives is based off the fear of going against what the Bible says or going against God or something like that. So I definitely think that although maybe morally or deep down they don't want to support what they see with their own eyes, they fear going against what the Bible says or what they were taught or indoctrinated to believe. Absolutely.
Since getting back, you're participating in a lot of demonstrations, and I've been watching the demonstrations online and social media in Puerto Rico, particularly led by Mothers Against War in front of the Israeli. They do, I think, every Tuesday they have a manifestation there. You participate, you've done interviews in that as well. You know, can you tell us a little bit about them?
Yes, absolutely. Madre Contra la Guerra was founded by Sonia Santiago on 14th of May in 2003. She's been an activist all her life, and a humanitarian all her life. I honestly didn't even know that this weekly protest existed. I watched Bianca, the journalist, Bianca Gerlau's video on it, and I was like, they're demonstrating in front of the Israeli consulate. No way. I went over there and spoke to them. It was important because I didn't know there was a web of solidarity for Palestine in Puerto Rico, especially one that demonstrated on a weekly basis. They've had over 100 demonstrations so far and haven't missed a single Tuesday. So I went over there, you know, and I told them who I was. I told them on one of the Tuesdays in July, if I'm not mistaken, I went over there. I told them, hey, my name is Mo. I went to the March to Gaza and I introduced myself right before I was leaving for the flotilla. I also went and spoke to them and told them that I was leaving. Meeting them and being able to interact with them and telling them that I stand in solidarity with them, they were able to help us, the flotilla, myself and the flotilla, a lot when it came time to putting pressure to both the government of Puerto Rico and the government of the United States to get us released. So it was very helpful and such a good feeling to feel understood and feel the solidarity from comrades from your island. So that was great.
Monisha, jump in there.
When I saw your interview on Telemundo, did you have any nerves about that? Because the Zionist presence in PR is strong throughout the archipelago. Do you anticipate any kinds of blowback or, like, you know how they do?
Yeah. Well, initially, like I said, when I got to Puerto Rico and I spoke to Sonia and she was telling me the news are going to be there off the rip. The news are going to be there at the airport. I'm just like, oh, what? Because we had no phones. We didn't even have pockets. So we're coming out of prison. I don't even have anything to put a phone. We have no pockets. When I'm finally getting to the airport, I'm realizing that this is being covered on TV for the whole island to see. I'm like, oh, wow. At the same time, I watched it and I realized they cut up what I said. A lot of the message was said, but there was a lot of words that were removed that are, that they don't want on mainstream media. So what I did was after that, anytime I went to Telemundo or WAPA, I waited to say the words that I was not supposed to say at the end, and because I was live. So they're like, oh, what's next for you? And then that's when I would mention the G word, or the 9,000 Palestinians that are still prisoners, just like we were. I had to strategically talk about myself, play the part, and then throw in a little bit of what needs to be said.
Yeah, absolutely. So you were at sea for over a month. You left a port in Barcelona, about 20 boats, making several stops along the way, stopped in Tunisia, Italy, etc. You collected around 50 boats before being intercepted.
It was 44 or 45, anywhere from 42 to 45.
You guys were being harassed by an IOS, suspected to be IOS through drones. You make it to international waters close by Gaza, and then you guys get intercepted by the IOF. Walk us through what was going on along the journey, what's going on through your mind. What did you guys expect? Did you guys expect to get intercepted like that? Or what you think would have been the outcome?
From the very beginning, we had 3 days in Barcelona where we trained all day for everything from handling content to the media personnel that are going to be aboard each ship, to safety procedures, to scenarios, to actually practicing them and playing the part, practicing interception during the classes, learning about every single flotilla that has ever attempted to break the siege, learning about the Marvi Mara, which is the flotilla where 9 or 10 activists were assassinated by the Israeli genocidal forces, and 46 were injured. There was a lot of training. We also went through a vetting process initially. So at all times, we understand that anything could get us off this mission. So it was very mission oriented the entire time. Once we got on the ships, we were very mission oriented, especially the veterans boat. From the very beginning, we spoke to a lot of people. Some thought we were going to make it. Others thought we weren't going to make it. My motto is I'm hopeful, but I don't have my hopes up. Regardless of what ends up happening in the end, we have to make the most out of every single moment because the eyes are on the flotilla. It was more of leveraging and making that bridge of, hey, we're trying to help these people out, but look at what they're doing to us. And that was really important because that's why the entire world mobilized. As far as getting intercepted or not, once we got into the high risk zone, I thought we were going to make it. And at night, I thought we were going to make it because it was taking them a very long time to intercept us once they started interceptions. For example, once the night fell, the night of the 1st of October, it took them approximately 6 hours to intercept 10 boats. So we were just calculating, making assumptions, saying, all right, well, if it's taking them this long, maybe we'll make it. We only got to 48 nautical miles away from Gaza when our boat, the Owaila, was intercepted. We were pretty close. The night prior to October 1st, we had a meeting. We had meetings every day and practiced certain scenarios every day. Like if explosives were dropped on our ship, which they were multiple times, we practiced if we were to receive fire, incoming rounds, sniper rounds. We practiced all sorts of scenarios, literally every day. But the day before, October 1st, we finally, for the first time, sat down and actually discussed the possibility of us reaching Gaza and being able to provide the humanitarian aid that we had for them. So for me, that was like, oh man, like we're close. Like, please let us get there. But then obviously we were intercepted. Boat that got the closest, if I'm not mistaken, was the Mykonos, and that boat was only 14 or 18 nautical miles from Gaza. Oh, and I forgot to answer your question before about if I expect any blowback. Sorry, I forgot to answer that second part of the blowback. Ever since I've started speaking up about Palestine, I've expected blowback at all times. The most important part isn't, for me, in my opinion, to accept it. It's to utilize it in my advantage and leverage it so I can make them look stupid. Or leverage it in any way so that I can utilize that attention to keep the momentum going. So if you're going to smear me, then okay, look, everyone, now that you're looking at me, check this out. I feel like I've been strategically doing. For example, I'm not going to call anything a specific smear, but I didn't give any of the media, journalists, or news outlets pictures of me with President Obama or President Bush until I got smeared. That then would cause a contradiction or a cognitive dissonance in your mind. Hold on, you're calling this person a terrorist, but now I've been strategically thinking about how I would respond to anything to always utilize that. Because the way I like to explain it, it's like, even if I get mad hate on social media, that's still an impression. That's still a comment. That's still discourse. For example, I've never had that audience. So for the first time, I can put all the massacres that Israel has committed against the Palestinian people, and you're forced to get that notification on your phone, even if you're a bot. So it's having that mentality of, okay, well, let's make it work then.
That's awesome. That's really fabulous. I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
Jovanni, did you have another question, or can I jump in with one? Along that vein, because I was watching social media, because we're connected on IG and in other convos, I was following, sharing, and watching the dialogue or discourse take place and seeing a lot of what you were mentioning before, the indoctrination that's here in the archipelago. And so that's what made me curious about what's it going to be like when you're back, and how, because you're going to be a hot topic for a while. So it's really cool. That's your strategy. But along that vein, how can we as Puerto Ricans and as Puerto Rican veterans, all of us, take advantage of the moment to further connect and deepen people's understanding of why should Puerto Ricans care about occupied Palestine? How do our struggles connect? How can we decenter ourselves in that understanding and not only be in solidarity with the struggle that's taking place there, but live active daily solidarity with the Palestinian community in Puerto Rico?
I've been giving this a lot of thought because I've only been in activism a very short time. So I'm a rookie myself. I think a lot about this, especially because the indoctrination in the archipelago is layered with not just religious indoctrination, but also colonization. It's very difficult to attack this intersectionality when this is all they know. So I think the first part, especially if it's people that either don't care about Palestine or think that Israel is doing good or think that they're the chosen people, or just whoever is still on this Israel can do no wrong, I think it's important to be kind, compassionate, and ask very specific questions that cause not just curiosity, but utilizes confusion to establish a simple right and wrong. For example, if you ask someone that supports Israel, why do you think that Israel is the only country in the world that tries children in military courts? Why do you think that Israel requires every single citizen to serve in the IOF? Because the reality is that there's too much information and too much misinformation. So the problem with misinformation isn't just that there's misinformation or too much information. The purpose of misinformation is not only for you to be misinformed. It is also for you to be in a constant state of confusion. So you can't decide or think critically about any sort of information you're consuming in the first place. So that's why it's difficult when you present information to someone and they're just like, I'm not having it. So you have to cause them to think critically about something very specific that they can choose to not align with left or right, but morality. Do you think this is okay? Or do you think this is not okay? And then they're like, oh, that's messed up. Israel's doing it. And then present it that way so they can at least perceive, receive, and try to analyze this information so they can look at it from a different point. I think that's what's really interesting. I was thinking about this when I was showering and what I was going to say in this podcast, because that's what's different about the flotilla and me in specific in reference to Puerto Rico. You have been looking at this issue from a brainwashed, capitalist, propaganda perspective for the last 2 years. Left, right. Israel, Hamas. This, that. This, that. That's all the Puerto Rican people have seen this entire time. Just brainwashing, propaganda. Now, I'm not coming at it from this angle or from this angle. I'm coming at it from this angle. There's a Puerto Rican. She went over there to bring food and help. And they arrested her and kidnapped her. That forces you to stop looking at it from these two angles. That forces you to be like, but why? Why did they stop them? Why did they torture them? Why did they sink their ships? Why did they steal their aid? So I think that's what's really important to capitalize off of, to unlearn all the indoctrination and propaganda that we've been force-fed over the last 100 years.
Do you think, so I've had discussions with other veterans on social media, I know for a long time we've been, we're in the army together, we're stationed together, we deploy together. And a lot of them, the people that I've had discussions with on this, right? They're Puerto Rican. They're Puerto Ricans or Dominicans, right? And there's this like deep, and when I bring what you're talking about, into discussion, think about the whys, think about the contradictions. Is it okay? A lot of them just hold on to their guns, right? And they have this deep hostility, this deep disdain to anything that resembles Islam or Arabs. And when I'm listening to them, right? They're very misinformed, and they bring up all kinds of stuff to justify why Israel does what it does, from the Holocaust to building pyramids, Egypt, all kinds of things, right? A lot of the thought process is rooted from the layers that were built in the beginning of this millennium, in 2000s, of this quote unquote global war on terror, right? So terrorism has been racialized, to have been given a face. And that face is someone who is from West Asia, someone who professes a different religion than Christianity, most likely Islam, etc. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, it's very true. And we all were victims of that, though. Like me, for example, I was a kid when 9/11 happened. So I'm watching the propaganda all day on the TV. I would smell the smoke from the school, and the whole world was saying, these people are your enemy. I would challenge you or anyone that thinks this way to ask them, okay, how many Muslims do you know? Let's go talk to them. How many Muslims do you know? Or how many Arabs do you know? Or when's the last time it's really interesting because there's peer-reviewed articles and a lot of studies about the United States needing to have a common enemy. It's just like the migrants. I think in order to try to work on that, especially from veterans and military members that have been indoctrinated to hate a specific group of people, is to welcome them in spaces that are more diverse. Because a lot of people like that are in echo chambers. Their friends all look the same. They don't get out of certain places. They've never been in certain spaces with certain people, and humanizing others, regardless if it's an Arab or a Muslim or not, maybe a Hindu, any sort of diversity that they can be submerged into with the goal of understanding, not to prove them wrong, but to be like, hey, we're all the same. We're all the same is the first step, but it's a lot of unlearning. None of these steps can be taken if they don't actually care or want to try. So that's really important too.
All right. So let's go back to the detention. What was the conditions like when you were held there? I know you were held in some remote place in the desert. Did you and other participants support each other while you were detained? These people that detained you, these Israeli forces, how they viewed you? What was your perception of them? Did they know you were a veteran? And if they didn't know, was the treatment different or was it the same as the others? How do you perceive that?
I mean, I'm still trying to process. I think it'll take me months. The way that I keep explaining is like it's one of those experiences that months will pass and you still wouldn't be able to fully take it in because it was so much. The entire ordeal was 6 weeks long. At the end was the prison time, which was loaded with people with a lot of hatred that they don't even know where it comes from. The treatment I think they did know that I was a veteran. Sometimes I would march them around and they didn't like it.
March him, how'd you march him around? You put him at
Like,
attention?
I was a drill instructor, you know? And when I was in prison, sometimes I would go to the door, and when they would walk from one cell to the other, I would left, right. They hated it. They hated it. You could also tell, and this was pretty sad. The entire time, it's really interesting because,
Oh,
and this
can
is what I
I
mean by this.
some
Genuinely,
let me ask you before you continue. Were any of these soldiers Americans or from American families?
think so. Like some of them, when I heard them talking, I think so. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I don't know for sure, but I am pretty sure that I saw at least two that had a perfect English accent. So, yes.
All right, go ahead.
I am living and witnessing this experience as the person, human, Puerto Rican, and humanitarian and activist that I am. But I'm also viewing this as the drill instructor that I was. And when you experience and when you live the tortures of the military industrial complex, you start looking things a lot differently. So I was having the experience, but I'm viewing it and living it in these two lenses. What I could observe just right off the get, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Stanford experiment. What I observed from the beginning was that the Israeli genocidal offense forces are completely, or most of the Israeli authorities, are completely dependent on physically abusing and terrorizing Palestinians. So when your enforcement of power is almost completely dependent on that, and then you have these citizens of the world that because of their passports, you can't necessarily torture them or beat them in that way, then you lose your power because you technically don't really have that much. Now, I'm not saying that they didn't brutalize people. I'm not saying that they didn't torture people and shame people and put them on their knees and mistreat them. It's important to make the distinction. I mean, we've seen the videos that are coming out of the prisoners without eyes. So it's important to make this distinction that based on our privileges and our passports, we didn't get that kind of torture, but definitely in the simplest ways, like not allowing you to go to the bathroom, not getting medical help when someone has just fainted, pads when you're on your period. We never got water, bottles of water, potable water. We were just drinking off the tap. They didn't give us food for the first 30 hours. Things like that, which they also do to Palestinians. They did psychological warfare. They threatened us. They put 57 women, including parliamentarians, including Greta Thunberg, in a cage and then threatened to gas us. The thing into the little square of the cage. Brutal forces that have experienced way too much impunity and are given way too much power. They also put up two big TVs in the prison and played October 7th propaganda with the volume all the way up during a whole day, just on repeat. They put a giant banner of destroyed Gaza that said the new Gaza for all of us to see from the cells. They made some people take pictures with the Israeli flag, kneeling. They physically beat people, drag people on the floor. So there was definitely a lot of that treatment while we were there. Yes.
Wow. Why not, Monisha? Yeah, jump in.
I'm sitting with that. It's not surprising at all, of course. And to think that they don't care about how that even looks for them doing that to people who are not their target population. And then knowing how much worse it is for Palestinians and the Palestinian children that they've captured. I think that that's just like sticking in my throat right now. I know, Mo, that one of the intentions of all the flotilla members is not to center themselves, but to use the privilege that you have to tell the story and to bring attention and all of that. And I think you're doing that really respectfully and wonderfully. So I just want to give you props for that. And to think that it takes people going to this extent to be able to do that. Like, in a way, it feels so huge the monster that is the Zionist entity and the power of each individual that went on each flotilla and will continue to go on the flotillas, I think is just so monumental in the face of that. But I'm also moved and inspired by that. And listening to you, it brings me back to the question of what can we do more? What more can we do? Because it's not just happening there. It's in the West Bank. It's also in every location that Zionism has a foothold. And that includes here in Puerto Rico. My mind is just going in all of these directions of helplessness, hopefulness, rage. Wish I was healthy
Absolutely.
enough to re-enlist in a people's army to go over there and do something that for some reason nobody else is doing.
I think for right now, especially now that eyes are on Gaza, on Palestine, in Puerto Rico, it's so hard. I'd say the hardest thing is the indoctrination and the evangelicals. That's not a hill, that's Everest for us and for the island. Anytime I've looked at it, and I've been looking at this issue since the aggression started, I'm just like, man, what can we do? But I think it's really important to boycott here in Puerto Rico. There's a gazillion McDonald's, Domino's, Burger King, and that directly funds the genocide. So I think now that eyes are on Palestine and Gaza, we need to educate. And even if it means, okay, get 5 people, you're going to teach 10 people, send them the list and keep forwarding it to the people. We need 10 people from each municipality to spread this and to let them know so they can at least take action. Don't buy coffee at Starbucks. You live in Puerto Rico. What are you doing? The coffee's great here. What are you doing? Stop buying Starbucks. Get out of here. So I think a mixture constantly going between, because people don't want to protest. People don't want to get out in the streets and scream for a little bit. And that's why the flotilla was so special, because people felt that they could, with the flotilla, a little bit more, because we were constantly asking for action back in the rear. And that was really special. There were so many places where they would just get on a kayak and get a Palestinian flag. And it's like, tag the flotilla. That is what made the world rise, that they could feel that they were also part of that movement. So I think for Puerto Rico, establishing the importance of boycotting and divesting Coca-Cola, mixing it with boycott and something verbal, like that would be the action, and then something would be like knowledge or teaching or this activity. But we definitely need to start organizing and getting together, joining the protests and the demonstrations in front of the bases. You need to boycott McDonald's, because the same way that they occupy Palestine, the US military is occupying us. Same thing. And it's not good. So things like that, making people feel that they can be part of something to the collective, I think is really important. To start. I mean, there's a lot of work, but to start, I think that's a good one. Because I see the lines at McDonald's, they're packed, packed. So I think that's a good way.
I mean, I go back to that colonial mindset you said earlier. Is the way we indoctrinated Puerto Rico is that anything that comes from here is better. Anything that comes from the United States is better. That's the indoctrination, the colonization process you talked about. Most of us followed you on social media, and I recall you making messages both in Spanish and English. You made reference to Puerto Rican historical independent struggles. You mentioned leaders, martyrs, and in your bio, you talked about that Maria radicalized you, in some way, and you started thinking more about Puerto Rico and its relationship with the United States. And I was asked that question in the interview, and at the time the person when they asked me that question, I feel I didn't answer properly. After the time went by, and I started thinking more about it. Do you see parallels between Puerto Rico's colonial status, its colonial condition, and Palestine? And if so, how?
It's the exact same playbook. The only thing, we're so colonized and have been so colonized for so long that they profit off our death. And they profit off anything in this island. That's the difference. The aggression that's happening in Palestine, we have experienced, but just on less severe levels. It's just like the sterilization of 1/3 of women from 1930 to 1970. That is insane. But it is the same playbook. Incluso in Israel, the finance minister, and I made a video about this, they talk about the day after Hamas, they call it the Puerto Rico model. So this second-class citizen, they utilize the same playbook. for people to not have sovereignty, self-determination, dignity, and be able to do whatever they want, not only with their lands, but with the people. I see many parallels. As to the videos you're talking about in specific, when I was in the flotilla, I was constantly brainstorming in the same way that I was telling you about the boycott. I was like, how can I, because I don't consider myself like this 10-year activist and all that stuff. I'm regular Joe Schmo, I promise you. I am a regular person that feels really desperate and really bad for what they're doing to the Palestinians. And I see my people. So that's our people. I literally see it this way. There's no difference between the human that I see in Palestine and the human that I see on my island. There's no difference to me. I mean that. When I was in the flotilla and they were like, oh, yeah, maybe we can make content, da da da. I was like, all right. I've read a couple of books. I read War Against All Puerto Ricans, which obviously I learned a lot there. And that took me down the rabbit hole of finding out all these things. The same thing that they do to Puerto Ricans, they do to Cubans. The same thing that they do to Puerto Ricans, they do to Palestinians. It's so connected. It's literally all connected. All of these imperialist oppressive forces, it's all connected. So I thought immediately in my social media, I was private for like 5-6 years, but I made it public for the flotilla because it would be safer for people to check in on me. When I was speaking with the media, there's one person in charge of media on the boat. So everything kind of needs to get cleared through them, just so we make sure that the messaging is aligned with our mission and purpose. And so I was telling them, you know what? I think I've been on Instagram since like 2012. In the years that I've been on Instagram, I've never made videos in Spanish. I've never spoken in Spanish in my videos. So I was like, that would be a really good surprise because I never do that on there. And it worked out perfectly and it benefited because this is a side of me that people didn't even think existed. Or this is something that people didn't really know. Most people know I'm Puerto Rican that know me, but they didn't know que yo todavía puedo hablar. I rep my island in the way that I do. So when they saw that, like, wait a minute. Oh shit. Then they're like, and now I'm speaking from a different perspective on the similarities between my people that you didn't see until just now and our people in Palestine. So that was my strategy. I'm glad that I was able to extend the voice and shed light on the systems of oppression that we don't seem to recognize, but that have destroyed our island slowly this entire time since the invasion.
Yeah, the day after Gaza Puerto Rican model.
The Puerto Rico model. Yep.
That's wild.
That's wild. It's the same playbook.
And when you say the Puerto Rican model, what do they mean by that? By a docile population? What do they mean by that?
They mean that they never want them to be sovereign. They never want them to be a state. They never want them to have self-determination. They never want them to be independent. They never want them to have a voice, to have dignity. That's what they mean.
But at the same time, they don't plan.
They want them to be dominated forever.
At the same time, they don't want them to be integrated in their society. Right?
What's that?
They don't want to be integrated into their society either.
Into what society?
Into their Jewish only Israeli society and whatnot.
There are Palestinians that live in Israel. They already exist. They don't want them to have self-determination.
There was a Palestinian in the Knesset as well at one point.
Yes.
With limited power.
They don't want Palestinians to ever be able to have any sort of control over their land. On top of that, the goal is to kill them all because there are $600 billion worth of natural gas off the coast of Gaza that belongs to the Palestinians. So it's a land grab and a resource grab. The goal is greater Israel. So that's why this is so important because they're not going to stop.
Just to check in with you, Mo, how are you feeling? Do you feel like you want to continue? Do you feel like you're getting near your stopping point?
I have to start driving in an hour, so I can do 20 more minutes if that's cool. I love to talk about these things. So, yeah, I'm good.
There's stuff that I want to talk to you about in our other group chat. Like, Yolanda's trying to set up a group call.
I have to look at, my phone's been blowing up. So it's the group chat with Libre and Yoli?
Yeah, but Yoli hasn't added you back yet because we're all trying to give you some space. So you're making my brain fire on all synapses on things we can do moving forward, but it's not appropriate for this. So Henry, edit me out. Thank you. but I'm going to have to start driving because I got to go all the way back to Saba and stop off at Home
Okay.
Depot on the way. Do y'all mind if I start driving while we continue?
Sure.
I'm just going to have my camera off and I'll be listening and I'll jump in when it's safe.
Awesome. Yes.
Mo. I know that in Puerto Rico, they call you Mo and the Anglo.
Whatever you want to call me is fine, Zuleyka.
Would you go on another Gaza mission?
Absolutely. Already looking into it. We have to stop this. This has to stop. I mean, I'm not saying we're some saviors, it's not like that, but we have to do everything in our power to end what's happening because they're destroying the planet and they're destroying the people. And if we normalize that, that means we allow that to do them to all of us.
Exactly.
And that's not going to happen.
What's your take on that so-called Trump peace plan?
On the peace plan,
Yeah.
it's just a sick white supremacist colonization plan that normalizes how the imperial forces disregard indigenous people and indigenous land, destroy it, and then try to rebuild, whitewash it, and make it for profit. So it's trash.
And what's your take on collaborative governments and how they've been behaving around Palestine?
Sorry, I didn't get the
collaborative governments around Palestine, and how they've been behaving and how they've pretty much been supporting their own way.
They're completely complicit in this genocide. That's what I believe. I experienced it in the March to Gaza when we weren't allowed to even get 30 kilometers away from Cairo because all sorts of authorities, military personnel, police, everyone was stopping us. The whole world is complicit, but especially the neighbors of the Palestinians and the ones that are in bed with Israel.
Yeah, Zuleyka, on that note, I think that's a good place to wrap up today. Thank you so much for joining us, for taking the time to share your thoughts. Do you have any last comments for us? What would your listeners, people listening to this, what would you say to them?
I would say, don't stop talking about Palestine. Don't stop talking about Gaza. The same imperial forces that are dropping bombs on children are the ones that are dropping bombs on sailors and fishermen in Venezuela and in Colombia. The same imperial forces that are starving children and starving mothers and fathers and families in Palestine are the same ones that are raising your light bill. It's the same imperial forces, and it's all for profit. So find the way to find solidarity and find the will to act, because in our thousands and in our millions, we are all Palestinians. And Palestine's the front line. Whatever our government is willing to do, this is something that Greg always says, whatever our government is willing to do to others, especially Palestinians, they're willing to do to you. They just haven't done it yet, but they will. Stand up and speak up now, because it's not going to get any better.
You have any last words?
What haven't you been asked that you want people to be asking? Is there anything that in all the interviews and things that you've been doing that you wish people would go deeper on?
I don't think I can think of anything off the top of my head. But I would say I'm not asked often about the occupation, like the actual occupation and the Nakba in 1948. So I think it's interesting that everyone brings up October 7th or Hamas. There was an article published by Save the Children, the global organization, that said 2023, and this was published in September of 2023, I think September 17th of 2023, you can just Google it, that 2023, now mind you, September, not October 7th, no, September, it was published by Save the Children, a global organization that saves children, that 2023 was the deadliest year for children in the West Bank. And that was in September of 2023. So I think I haven't really been asked about Hamas ever. But what I would have to say to that is, when are you going to wake up and realize that's the excuse that they're going to use to kill them all? Thing. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say thank you.
Thank you.
Mo, Zuleyka, where can people find your work and get involved?
What's that?
Where can people find your work? And how can people follow you?
Oh, I just have IG. Maybe I'll have to open up a Facebook or something or some sort of YouTube so I can talk. But at MO_ZUU, Mozu, you can just find me there. That's usually where I post all the information, repost, and share what I have to say, and share my solidarity and my actions. I also like to show up to things and meet people and talk to people and stand in solidarity and hug people. I love hugging people. I think it's really important. Yeah. You can find me there.
Morales Rivera, everyone. Thank you so much again for coming
Thank
on
you.
the call and taking us your time. Thank you for joining us. Like us, subscribe to our channels, YouTube, X, Telegram. Look us up anywhere where you listen to podcasts. Please share us with your friends. Help us grow. Stay tuned to our next episode. Take care.
Money is tight these days for everyone. Penny pinching to make it through the month often doesn't give people the funds to contribute to a creator they support. So we consider it the highest honor that folks help us fund the podcast in any dollar amount they're able. Patreons is the main place to do that. In addition, any support we receive makes sure we can continue to provide our main episodes free for everyone. And for supporters who can donate $10 a month or more, they will be listed right here as an honorary producer, like these fine folks. Fahim's Everyone Dream, Eric Phillips, Paul Appel, Julie Dupree, Thomas Benson, Janet Hansen, Ren Jacob, Scott Spalding, Spooky Tooth, and Helgeberg. However, if Patreon isn't your style, you can contribute directly through PayPal at paypal.me/Fortress on a Hill. Or please check out our store on Spreadshirt for some great Fortress merch. We're on Twitter and Facebook.com/Fortress on a Hill. You can find our full collection of episodes at www.fortressonahill.com. Skepticism is one's best armor. Never forget it. We'll see you next time.
Come on, you good people, listen to my song. I hope you'll pay attention. I will not take you long.
www